Welcome back, everybody. The House Budget Committee continues debating a resolution to the debt limit crisis to avoid defaulting, which the Congressional Budget Office says could be as early as midsummer at this point. Following the CBO's latest report, our next guest says that things are worse than we thought and that it's time to rein in spending before it's too late. Joining us right now is Congressman Jodey Arrington, who is the chairman of the Budget Committee. And Congressman, thank you for being here. Let's talk through what we know now from the Congressional Budget Office. It looks like another $3 trillion in deficits over the next decade. Part of that is because of rising interest rates. But the other issues they cited include defense spending and care for veterans, among other items.
Well, if we didn't believe that spending was out of control, we now have an updated projection. The last time this nonpartisan budget scoring group gave us projections was in May, and just from last May to date, we have $3 trillion more. We're going to have twice the level of annual deficits, from $1.5 trillion this year to $3 trillion 10 years from now. So it's more spending, it's a worse economy, it's more soaring interest rates and record inflation, and the sum of it is our nation's health is in decline, and our fiscal trajectory is completely unsustainable, and it would be totally irresponsible for this president and our Democrat colleagues not to negotiate some limitation on our spending going forward.
Brendan Boyle, who's the top Democrat on the Budget Committee with you, said recently it's almost as if they want to take the hostage first and then figure out what they're doing later. I think Democrats have complained that GOP lawmakers have said they want to broadly call for cuts but not make tough choices. I know you have actually been sitting down looking through some of the things that you would cut. You want to lay out some of those items?
Well, there's a long list, actually. I think there's a tremendous amount of waste and unnecessary spending, especially coming out of COVID. Let's just start with COVID. There's $100 billion in unspent COVID monies. And we know that the COVID relief, so-called COVID relief, is what ignited inflation. We should rescind that. We should rescind the public health emergency. That's tens of billions of dollars. We can look at budget caps. Our budget is going to freeze 24 at 22 levels. We think we ought to right size and reset coming out of COVID in terms of discretionary spending. And then there are lots of low-hanging fruit opportunities for savings. On the mandatory side, for example, we have a labor shortage because this administration has paid people to stay home and not work. They've repealed reasonable work incentives. We should restore those. That's tens of billions of dollars. And I haven't even gotten to the IRA's climate subsidies. I haven't talked about Obamacare subsidies that have been increased for those making over $200,000 a year. So there's a long list to start with, and we need to do right by our children and their future in this country. That's what this debate is really about.
In terms of what happens with a default, a potential default for the United States, do you think we will hit that? Would you allow us to default on our debt? You think these are negotiations that can take place beforehand and that there's any bipartisan sort of support? I mean, I know you've looked at this pretty honestly and said you're not going to get everything you want, and it's not going to come anywhere near the sort of savings that you would like to do.
That's right. I mean, that's the reality of any negotiation. I think we have to all be adults about it. This is the greatest country in the world. We want to keep it that way. I think our fiscal health and the trajectory we're on is the greatest long-term threat. And so, you know, this president, for example, has been a part of those negotiations. He has supported freezing the budget. He has supported budget caps in the past. So this isn't new to him. We've had a debt ceiling around for 100 years. We've never defaulted. We will not default today. We will protect the good faith and credit of the United States, but we will not give this president or any politician an unlimited line of credit with no guardrails. And especially now that we're looking at 120% debt to GDP, the most we've ever had, and the largest amount of indebtedness in the world.
I know some of these issues that you've mentioned, I think probably like clawing back some of the COVID unspent funds, maybe cutting down on fraud when it comes to food stamps and some other areas. You might get some bipartisan support on things like that. Are you willing to also put limits on issues that are really historically Republican priorities, something like defense spending?
There's no question that there is waste at the Pentagon, the largest bureaucracy in the federal government. And I know Mike Rogers, the chairman of Armed Services, is totally committed to rooting that out. We know there's improper payments of upwards of $280 billion across the government. Some of that, maybe a lot of that, is in the Pentagon. But I will tell you, in terms of lethality and bullets, guns, tanks, bombers, the things that we need to do to prevent a conflict, to stabilize the world, to protect our interest abroad, and basically to be ready against great power threats like China, that's our first and most important priority as a government. You can strip almost everything out of it. We have to do that to survive. So, of course, there's inefficiency there, but we're at lowest levels per GDP, per capita, in terms of investment in our defense and our readiness. I'm concerned about that. I think you can do both there, make the investment, root out inefficiency, but the non-defense waste is tremendous, and that's where we're going to start. But everything's on the table in terms of defense and non-defense discretionary in these conversations.
Chairman Arrington, want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. God bless.